Hello and welcome back to Say It Sister with Karen and Lucy, two leading empowerment coaches, leadership coaches and friends who unite weekly to put the world to rights. This episode feels a little different because today we're pressing pause for the summer. Not an ending, not a goodbye, just a moment to reflect on the first half of the year, take stock of the conversations we've had and create some space before we return. This episode is a pause, not an ending, a chance to really review, to honour the conversations and to step into summer with more spaciousness. I don't know about you, Lucy, but I'm ready for a break and I'm definitely ready for some me time. And I feel like a hammock is calling me. So far, the year of the horse has been intense, lots of fire and momentum. And as I said the other day, even my husband's feeling it. And I said, I feel like this year is on steroids. It's like everything's been pumped up and really intense. So how are you doing? And can you lead us into some core reflections so we can take some time to appreciate just how far we've come and just how far I'm sure a lot of the listeners will have come as well.
Yeah, I'm good. I definitely want to celebrate this season two that we've completed, and I went back and had a look at such an array of topics, and we've had some really cool guests on as well over the last year. Um, and I am tired, but that's because I think since, I don't know, May Day, there just seems to have been something on every single weekend. It's just been really busy. But that's how summer generally is. It's like we've all been in with like cold, dark weather and in hibernation, and then suddenly the sun comes out. We're all out busy making plans. And it's a bit of a shock to the system. So I'm definitely planning a more relaxed summer, a nicer pace. Um, and yeah, just putting all of the thoughts and ideas and everything that we've been through in their right place. And then I thought, do you know what? I'm going to go and have a look at what are the topics that we've covered that have landed with the audience, the ones that people have like really tuned into. So our most popular episodes were around, I guess it's about taking action. So it was about the matriarchy, women uniting for change. There was about political division, because let's face it, that's the world we're living in right now. Female rage, that was another really popular episode. And it's almost like we're sensing that women have needed an outlet because they're feeling these things. They're watching the news, they're seeing reports, they're noticing stuff within themselves, and they're like, "Am I the only one? You know, make this make sense." And then they're listening to us, and we're like, "We're talking about it as well." And they're like, "Oh, okay, I feel less alone." So there's definitely a new sisterhood energy that's coming. But then I looked at some of the other topics we talked about, and it has gone through finding our voice, leadership, boundaries, burnout, identity, giving ourselves permission just to feel joy. And we've looked at, just wider aspects of womanhood, including, we had to talk about the manosphere because that went viral because of the Netflix documentary. The amount of online misogyny that we've seen, we had to talk about that. Um, and also, the backlash women get for just showing up and speaking their mind.
Yeah.
So we've covered a lot.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because some of these episodes have been actually quite complicated and hard, although we know what's right and we know what's wrong. So there's a simplicity in like that's actually just wrong. So there is a simplicity there. However, they've been tough to talk about and go into and research. And I think that's what I learned this year is that I really, because we're coaches and we hold such an intimate space and we do such deep work with women and we sort of can hold anything. And that's really amazing. And that's what makes us good. And that's why we're still coaching 14 years on. Um, However, there is still that recovery point. And I think when you're doing a podcast and you're talking about such a wide array of topics, for me, like there were times when I was like, oh my gosh, I feel so heavy. I feel so dense. I feel I don't really want to talk about this. Like I'd rather just, continue with my life and ignore it. But actually, I've learned through my own life experiences that if something's coming up and it's like kind of like in your face, it's better to face in as opposed to ignore it because there's something there for me as well. And so some of these topics I have found difficult and it's taken me into my own journey again. And yet, isn't that what our lives are about? What's your
Yeah,
thoughts?
totally. And sometimes I would go into a topic and think, I haven't found the words yet. I don't know what to say on this topic. But as soon as I started talking, I'm like, oh, actually, I do have a lot. And I think that's genuinely my way. I talk things through to make it make sense. I also do a lot of writing to help get my thoughts organized. So I've really appreciated not trying to be the expert on things and just actually talking through things through and saying what's going on. This is how I'm feeling. And generally, yes, it might be a really heavy topic, but just knowing that I'm not the only one feeling this has felt actually, well, it's made it feel lighter, manageable, that, yeah, I'm not alone. So it has absolutely been a gift. But let's face it, we're not here just to talk about unicorns and rainbows, because we're realists. We live in a real world, and the work of being a woman in 2026 in the UK is hard. In other nations around the world, it is impossible. And I think because here we have a voice, I think we have a duty to be able to speak up, because we've got sisters around the world who don't get that privilege. So if we're not going to have the courage to go to those topics, it feels like we're choosing suppression,
Absolutely.
because we do have the civil liberties and the the agency to be able to talk about it. So it's kind of like we've got to lead through this. We are wise women leading, and yeah, we've got to go there.
Absolutely. And I think when you have the intimate conversations with women, when women take their masks off and go into the work with us and we, unpack it and we do it either one on one or in a group, you just realize how much women are actually carrying and how much they're having to hide in most of their relationships, actually, and actually sometimes from themselves. And when we step into that field with them, like, you get to see what the real conversations are, you get to see what the real themes are, you get to see the patterns, that are showing up in one woman's life is often something that another woman is experiencing either down the road or on the other side of the world. And I think that's what gives me a sense of, wow, like, we are so similar. We are so incredibly the same, and we are experiencing very similar things. And it might feel like they're on the other side of the world and we're here in the UK. But actually, who knows, what distance kind of falls away in these moments. And for me, it's such a, like I always say when I work with women, I always feel so privileged that I get to really see what's going on, and they get to they tell me the truth, and I get to have that lens um, with them, and then we can sort of really start to sort of move through in the way that's right for them. Like like what an honor and what a privilege, because perhaps I'm the first person on their journey, or maybe they've done it with others, and I'm now meeting them at this junction, and I can't. And I have had those people, those women, some men that have done that for me, and I know that they sit in my heart somewhere. And if I'm shaking or going through something that they said or shared with me will come back at the right moment, and I'll just go, oh, and it's like, thank God, that thing that you said 10 years ago to me is still there. And and I think that's what we are also here for. And a podcast is slightly different because we can't have the conversation direct with every listener. So we're talking together, hoping that it brings them in and that they can relate and know that they're not alone. But we can't see their faces or hear their voices, and it's just a different way of working, I suppose. And I do want to say that I feel, even though some of these conversations are hard, I do feel like it's a complete honour and privilege to be able to broadcast to anyone who might want to listen to us. And you've got some, information of where people are, haven't you? So share that one with us.
Yeah, so think it works out at 24% are in North America, which is really cool, because we haven't had too many guests from the States, but they're listening, they're tuning in. And something like 72% are from mainland Europe, well, let's say North Europe. And then we have smatterings of people from Australia, Asia, some South African. But yes, predominantly I guess because the lens that we talk through is what we call Western woman. That is where most of our leaders are. But it's just really cool that, we're putting our conversations out there and they're landing with so many women around the globe. So that feels really cool as well, because actually we have no idea when we started this who was going to listen. But it just goes to show that there again is this global womanhood experience. And and I think we started to notice this the more we started to talk with you and I, and we're like, oh, we're experiencing and seeing the same thing. Then we talk to our friends, and then we start then talking to other people. And there is this absolute shift in the experience of being a woman. It's almost like social media has allowed us to find each other. And I'd class the podcast as part of that social media. It's being shared, because women's voices have never had such a platform before, where two women can just get together and share their thoughts and their feelings and their experiences. And even on Instagram and our Facebook and our YouTube, we're getting women finding us there and sharing their thoughts or sharing our content. So we know that it is resonating. And we equally get inspired by the other women that we are following, and hearing their thoughts and their perspectives on things. So it feels like right now the sisterhood is really starting to form, and it might be done quietly within women's circles, so we notice what's going on. It might not be as overt, but things are starting to change, and I'm really excited by that. And actually, the woman's way has never really been loud and in your face, but it's definitely been foundational. And I think that's going to definitely be a theme that's going to be coming up for season 3. Noticing what women's movements are doing, how we're starting to lead change. So that's really exciting, because a lot of this year, in particular, has been very much about stepping into our midlife power, our unapologetic era, our sovereign era, because obviously you had a very big birthday and it brought up a lot of stuff. And so I think this year has definitely been about naming and reclaiming our womanhood sovereignty. And then the season ahead, let's see where that takes us.
Absolutely. And I feel like it's been full of ups and downs, and there's been so many plus points this year, so many things to celebrate. I think the big thing that I've learned is about, our energy leads us. And, as much as we think we've got energy to go around and share with everyone, we're realizing that actually, if we've got good energy, we lead in a certain way. And if our energy is low or lacking, actually, we lead very differently. And I think that's been my big takeaway. And I've noticed that, the whole thing of say it sister, it's really about speaking up, speaking out. That's not always easy. And yet we are fans of talking therapies. Women do talk, they do share. I do feel that as we've, second season into the podcast, our voices are getting stronger. People are, understand what we're talking about. They understand what they come to listen for. And that's a wonderful thing. And really to encourage women to find at least one way to share their voice, even if that's to themselves in the mirror, to keep doing that, because it does do something. And I think definitely for me, when I'm honest, I do have a vulnerability component sometimes. I will be like, oh, I think I might have shared too much, or oh God, that feels slightly uncomfortable, and there's a shame that's coming up, and I feel all of that. Then I go, what's the cost of not speaking? What's the cost of not sharing? Actually, it's far greater for me than speaking up. And I think that's something that I really, really want to sort of land in this lesson today. That it's really important that we do speak, because otherwise, the shutdown in the throat is something that all women experience. We've done an episode on that. This gets very, very tight. If we start to suppress one area, it's in one place, then we just stop sharing what we think, what we like, what we don't like, and it becomes a really, really bad thing for women. So that's the biggie for me. And I feel like there's been something about plugging ourselves back in, whether that's to our like empress, our queen, our sovereignty. There's just been something about coming back in and being like, no, I am here and I'm ready to do things and I've got something to say. And yeah, let's take the space. I think that's ultimately the thing. I think this is a time in life for us to take the spaces that we want to take in a very conscious way. And when we don't have the energy for that, to go off and chill out and rest.
Oh,
What?
yeah,
Come
I was going to say there's also been a bit of a theme that we've spoken about this series about appreciating men, because throughout our conversations, we obviously focus on the women, and we also talk about a lot of the harm that patriarchy, the manosphere, the cyberbullies, the bots, how they try and shut us down. But we've also layered in there about some of the amazing men that are there as our allies, our companions, um, our guides and mentors. And that's a really positive theme that I think has come out of this conversation, because even out there in this the sphere of life, you still get people saying, "Oh, you're all just feminists," and like, yes, we are, but that's not a bad thing because we do love men. We want our sons, our brothers, our allies to thrive. We want all men to thrive because actually, when men thrive, we thrive.
Yeah.
When men aren't doing well, women actually are suppressed and hurt and basically killed or attacked. And so we don't want any of that. So I just wanted to mark the season with that equally, that we both shared a lot of appreciation for the men in our lives. And you've obviously been celebrating with your, well, it was Father's Day in the UK last month, so we were celebrating the fathers in our lives. I've just been away with my dad for his very special birthday, and it just made me appreciate just what an awesome human being he is and has been all my life. So I think that's important just to mark as well, that yes, we're here for women, but it's also about appreciating the wonderful men.
Yeah. And I'm going to share a little story here. I volunteered last week on a school trip, and one of the children got stuck in the toilet at this place where we were at, and they couldn't get her out. And it was like on this hill, like really hard to access. So they called the fire brigade, and the little girl was, 7, and she was obviously distressed, and she'd been in the toilets for half an hour at this point. And we were talking about getting the fire brigade up and how that was going to work. And, the women in the group, we were like organizing all of that. And there was one dad had volunteered, and he's an ex-police officer, thank God, and he went into the toilet, and they were trying to hammer it off and do all this stuff. And in the end, he just used brute force. I don't know how he did it, but like he basically kicked the door in, and the child was brought out, and she'd have probably been in there. Who knows how long she could have been in there waiting for the fire brigade, because she was actually safe, but she was very distressed. And I just was like, thank God he was with us, because it was all women and just this one amazing guy. And what a guy. I was like, I just, it's making me feel emotional because it's that idea of sometimes we need men like that to come in with their brute force, and rip the doors down. I mean, it's a metaphor, isn't it? We need it in the corporate space. We need it in the boardrooms. We need those men that say, we're ripping this door down so that these women can come in. We're smashing that ceiling so that they can rise. You know, those are the men that we want in our life that can step into that role and will step into that role and will remove the obstacles for us, because there wasn't anyone else that could have done that.
Yeah, I can just imagine, like, he wouldn't have wanted any praise, but actually to get the wholehearted praise, and being a bit of a hero just for doing the right thing rather than this fakery of how to be a bro, or part of the manosphere, and trying to exert a certain kind of power. Because let's face it, most of us look at that and we don't think that's something we want in our lives. It's a masculine version of what masculinity should be, and this guy was just turning up and just being an awesome citizen.
And
That's what we want.
volunteering
And
on a kid's trip, like he was the only man that had done that from all the dads. I think that, and I know this feels very gendered now, and I don't want to get myself into trouble with this one, but I do feel like, um, it tends to be still the women that volunteer on the trips, unless I'm missing something. And but the fact that he'd even stepped into that role, that caretaking role, that nurturing role, that being present for his child, doing, he's a governor as well. And I just thought, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. We want those men taking those seats too and doing those things too. And if they can help us out in these areas where we need it, brilliant. It's just a good example for me of a really great role model. He can take care of the kids, but he can also bang the door down when it's needed.
yeah, and I think we're starting to see a much bigger shift in society as a whole. Like in the UK, we've obviously had lots of issues with flags being put on lampposts of protests. In the States, we've obviously got quite a lot of far right or more conservative views about how people should live that are being perpetuated by their leader. But we're starting to see a shift, and it's men, women, young people, people of all colours and faiths who are starting to say, we reject that. And I think the loudest voices were getting the traction, the noisiest, the scariest, the ones who felt like a bit of a mob mentality. And so a lot of people were just silenced because they were a bit scared of, what's the backlash going to be? And I'm starting to see that there is very much more people finding their voices, finding their people, and doing it with that soft power. So whether it's men going on the school trips, stepping up to be governors, speaking up against injustice, but they're not doing it in a really loud way. Because it's almost like that loud, gobby, intimidating way is actually becoming a bit anti-culture, which is really reaffirming almost that when we talk about the matriarchy, which we've spoken about quite a lot, and we talk about it being like a circle where everybody is there to try and look out for those who are the most vulnerable, especially like the children and the environment. It's there's large pockets of that coming in, and rather than, like I say, being really overt about it, we're just quietly getting on with it,
Yeah.
and we're cleaning up our streets and we're clearing up our schools and we're supporting our kids. And once we can normalise that with that soft, gentle, kind power, it just becomes the norm. So I'm feeling more hopeful now than I did this time last year. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it seems now that we've got some good alternatives around us. And I think that's the thing, when you've got very extremes working against each other, it's like you're in one camp or you're in the other camp, but I can see there's alternatives and there's a lot of work that's going on behind the scenes. And let's be truthful, we've had so many positive changes for women in this country. You know, things like endometriosis, the maternity midwives now that are, there's been lots of investigations into the healthcare system. There is a lot of change going on in both in the birthing and maternity areas so that women can get the support that they need when they're giving birth. We've got the menopause changes where, there is now legislations that protect women. The same with the periods and endometriosis and fibroids and all of that. So we've got all of these new regulations coming through, and there's also, laws against misogynistic behaviour as well. So, now if somebody feels like threatened by catcalling or that kind of shouting in the street, someone can get arrested and they'll have to go to, the police, and they could get put away for it. And I think this has all happened in a relatively short time, but obviously there's been a lot of discussions and debate and lobbying and, movements going on behind the scenes. And now we're seeing the impact of that and the results of that, because laws are changing, things are happening again next year. And I just feel like it's about time on one side of it, and at the same time at least we can see that something is shifting, and that there is, that the systems are moving in alignment with what women really really need. And I'm talking about it from the women's side, because let's be truthful, it's mainly been steered towards men, as we know, but at least there is something happening that's like, oh no, we need to change that now. And the only way we're going to do it is if it goes through legislative changes. So that's my two
Yeah,
cents.
totally. So let's talk about what our hopes are for this summer, and the season ahead. So what are your intentions that you want us to hold for you?
So good question. I hadn't planned that one. For me, it's really about just staying very present, and I want to unfold and just get centered. I feel like I've done a lot of sort of in between all areas of my life, and everything's been happening in all areas of my life this year. So I've had to really, I feel quite scattered. And so I think for me, the summer is about pulling in. I can see some of the work that I need to do for myself personally as well. So it's just taking time, no initial work initially, to rest and recover. And then when I can feel like the energy's rising in me, that's when I'll start to do some of the deeper work that I need to do. Um, you know, we were One of the questions we were talking about was what patterns do we have around burnout and overgiving and identity? Like, what do we need to unlearn? And I think for me, if I'm going to bring that back to that question, I have always felt like I need to care for people. And I've had it from being a little girl, and that I need to rescue and provide and make everything okay for the people around me and the people that I love. I've always felt like that. And I've tried to do that all my life, really. But now at this point in my life, I feel like I'm much more, and it's still really hard for me because that's why I need to do the work. This idea of learning to receive and be taken care of, the only time I've ever really gone with that is if I've been super ill, like when I had my accidents and I couldn't walk. That's when I would go, okay, I can't walk, I need help. Okay, I'll allow this to happen. So that's physical. Like that's been something for me that's when I get physically something happens, I'll allow people to care for me. But actually, what I'm learning is that's really messed up. It's just out of balance, it's out of sync, and it's not sustainable at this point in my life. As I'm now 50, I might be able to do it for another 10 years and give it, but actually, as I'm getting older, I'm like, that's how is that actually going to work for me long term? And I don't think it is working anymore. So it's more about how do I pull back in? How do I receive and tell myself it's not weakness and tell myself that I deserve to be taken care of and that I'm, a queen doesn't do everything for herself. She has people who help her. She has, people, she has a crew around her, a team around her. So it's like seeing it more from that place as opposed to, I'm failing, I'm weak, I can't do this alone. All of that like girl power stuff that I do believe in. And I think we have to have a level of it. I just need to evolve it now a little bit more so that I'm much more open and learn what is mine to carry and what is not mine to take forward. And that's going to be the work that I'll be doing when I'm ready over the summer.
Oh, I can't wait to hear about it in September when we come back. My intention is for July, it's kind of like tidying a few bits and pieces up so I can just take August and just have 4 weeks of no plans as such, taking each day and really living in the present, being aware. I really want to finish all of my books that I've got like half read, and just basically take a staycation and yeah, feed my soul, rest, recover, get excited and curious about things. So that's my intention for this summer period. Because I know that when I do that slowing down and I finish all those books and listen to all the podcasts, that I'll come back buzzing with ideas in September so that we've got so much more content and ideas. So yeah, I always need time because I'm a projector. I like taking all this information and it can become quite overwhelming, and I need at least a month just to join all the dots and take that big picture view. So that's my intention for August, as well as catching up with friends and family, going maybe for some nice walks. But yeah, just doing all the things that feed my soul. Because I'm in the position now where both my children are working. They aren't home much at all, and when they are home, they're doing their own thing. So I literally have nothing to do but to give to me. So
Yeah.
it's going to be great. It's the first year where I literally have nobody to please other than myself for the whole of August. So with that in mind, it is time to close season 2 of Say It Sister. Go away with our intentions, and we'd love to invite you to set you listeners to set some intentions for the year ahead. We'd love you to let us know which is your favourite episode. What topics do you want us to talk about in the season ahead? And yeah, just keep sharing, liking, promoting, commenting, because we want more women to come and join us. So have a wonderful summer, and until September, keep saying it, sister.